This is day 28 in the HackerRank 30 Days of Code Challenge. We're going to receive some strings of text from a database, and it's going to come in the form of first name and email address. So here we need to print a list of people whose email address ends with gmail.com. But that list has to be in alphabetical order. When you start this challenge, all the code can be edited, which makes this code a bit messy at first when you look at it. So I decided to solve this challenge by directly modifying their main function. You don't need too many lines of code. Where I've added my code, I've also added some comments to clarify what I'm doing. First here, this is their own code. They have a string and then they get a value. And here they are storing a value for n. When you look at their input here, they say that n corresponds to the total number of rows in the table. And again, the table here corresponds to the table inside the database. So once they have this number of rows, they iterate as many times as the value of n, and then they get some inputs for the first name and the email ID. They get the inputs at every iteration, and the input looks like this here: first name and then email address. You don't need to pay too much attention to this and this. To me, the most important parts of the code provided by them is around these lines: the first name and the email ID. So all I did to pass this challenge is to come here at the top here, create a vector of strings that I'm calling names, and then inside of the for loop that they have here, inside this one, below the first names and email ID that they have, you see my comment here. I'm basically checking if this email ID is from Gmail, meaning that it needs to contain @gmail.com to qualify as a Gmail address. When you submit this challenge, there's going to be a value like this one. So if you only have Gmail without the @ symbol here, it's going to count this as a Gmail address because this can be found and your code is going to fail. So here I'm saying if I can find @gmail.com inside of my email ID, the find method is not going to return a -1. This here is a constant. I think it's for -1, but this is what you get when this method does not return anything. So it's going to give you this value here. If it doesn't, it means it was able to find something exactly what I specified here as the argument. And if it did, then I want to push the first name here inside of the vector that I created. Again, the names vector is this thing right here. If the email ID inside of this current iteration in this for loop, if this ID is from Gmail, then I'm pushing the first name corresponding to that address inside of my vector. And then when I'm done here, I need to print the names inside my vector, but I need to sort my vector first. Because they said we need to print the names in order, I'm calling the sort function in C++. I'm passing the beginning of my vector and the end, meaning that I want to sort my entire vector, and I'm iterating through the values and printing them at every iteration. Notice that I have this ends line here so that the names are printed line by line. And that's it for the code. You don't need to look at these things here. This is their code, and they're using that to process their inputs. So I'm submitting this code now. We've passed the test case. Let's submit this code. We have 3 test cases in all, and we just passed all of them. So that's it for day 28. It was called Regular Expressions, Patterns, and Intro to Databases. If you like my solution, please subscribe to my channel, check out my playlist, and also my code on GitHub, and I'll catch you next time.